Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Paul. Today has finally come and I am going to talk about all of the travel nurse agencies I've worked with and if I recommend them or not. This is a frequently asked question here on my channel and people are always asking me, what are your top agencies you work with and which ones do you recommend? Now that I'm done with travel nursing, I can now share all of my experiences with you and all of the agencies that I've worked with. I'm going to tell you now that there is absolutely no perfect travel nurse agency. It does not exist, period. That is just a harsh reality of travel nursing. And once you work with multiple agencies, you'll realize what I'm talking about. Now, what I'm going to tell you is based on my experience with those agencies and my time that I worked with them. I got my tea here in my propofol mug. Grab your beverage of choice or snack, and let's talk about these travel nurse agencies. New West was my very first travel nurse agency that I worked with, and I have been travel nursing for over 2 years now. I recently ended my very last travel contract because I start CRNA school very soon. That's the only reason why I left travel nursing. New West was the very first travel nurse agency that I worked with. I really didn't know any better during that time because that was the very first surge of the pandemic. You would see cities up north like New York and Boston surging, and it was the first real taste of COVID nursing. My friend, my coworker, just happened to say, "Hey, do you want to come to Boston with me?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. Sign me up." And I just went with whatever she was doing, and it seemed very legit. So that started our very first travel nurse endeavor. I think maybe I asked another coworker that I knew who went to New York and turned in his 2 weeks, and he was the very first one that I knew who left the hospital. I only knew of his travel nurse agency. And I've always looked into travel nursing even when I was staff and pre-COVID, but it seemed like something down the line or something that I would enjoy in the future, but I was still enjoying my time in my staff unit. And for a first contract, New West was overall a very good experience for me. Some pros that New West had was that they reimbursed for scrubs for traveling to your city that you're going to be working in. They reimbursed licensing, and during that time it was a little tricky with licensing. Even though I had a compact license, I still needed a Massachusetts license to work in Boston. With so many travel nurses trying to pick up contracts there up north, it was a little harder to get your license, and these contracts were, "We need you as soon as possible." And my recruiter and her boss would be on the phone with the Board of Nursing with Massachusetts, and they tried hard to get our licenses before our start date. And we did. It was amazing how helpful they were, how good with communication they were as a travel nurse agency, and I was really impressed with that aspect. My recruiter is so sweet, she's so nice and good with communication, just a very genuine person, and I really liked her, and I still kept in touch with her even after that contract. You'll notice that a lot of agencies will offer the same reimbursements, but not all of them do. So I'm going to talk about that also in the next agencies that I've worked with. But a good recruiter and things that you need off your checklist are a must when you're shopping for travel nurse agencies. Another pro with New West is that they have a lot of contracts all over the country, but specifically the Pacific Northwest if you're interested in going in that area. And they also have contracts for Guam and Saipan. Thought that was great, and I follow them on Instagram and they're constantly posting their jobs on there. They just make it very accessible for you in that way. Some cons during my contract was I think I had about 3 paychecks that were a few days late or they were incorrect. There were miscommunication with the Kronos system and their payroll, but that was the only hiccup in my contract. I didn't have any contract issues at all, even with the extension, and I was able to get that crisis rate till the very end of my extension. Other than that, their team is very reliable. They have a very smooth, well-oiled machine that they run with onboarding up to the end of your contract, and I recommend them. Thumbs up. Our next agency is Aya. Aya is probably the most talked about agency in the travel nurse world. There's a lot of tea with Aya, not particularly in my experience, but if you search through the travel nurse groups, you will find a lot of things that have transpired with other travel nurses and their complaints with the company. And a question that's frequently asked on the groups are, does anyone recommend a good Aya recruiter? It's a very common theme, and I guess they just don't have recruiters that people like, or they're not responsive. And I have met other travelers in the hospitals I've worked in, and they expressed that they didn't really like or vibe with their recruiter, and so they asked if they could have mine. And you have the right to switch recruiters too if you want. And that is just one of the things you go through as a travel nurse, is that you have to work with your recruiter, and if you find a good one, make sure you keep them. So let's start with some pros with Aya. And I've done a couple contracts with them. Honestly, they have a lot of locations, a lot of positions available out there, and they are high paying. I think they have that leverage with their company, and that's why a lot of people will sit through horrible recruiters, horrible payroll in order to get that contract. That is one of the main points I also wanted to talk about. And it's not always about the agency, it's about the contract. As long as you get that contract and you finish it and you get your money, that's all that really matters to it. That's why I work with so many agencies, because I want to know that I can get the best contract possible. And with Aya, you are able to also get reimbursements for your scrubs, your travel, and for your licensing. And if you renew a license, let's say you already applied for your California and then a whole year passes by and you want to pick up another contract there, Aya will reimburse you, which I think is awesome. Their insurance is great. I loved having their insurance. I think it's one of the best ones out there. I would do all my appointments whenever I do have that insurance. I would get my dental and vision appointments done and your regular checkup. And I barely had to pay anything. So that is a big plus. And they offer 401k after 4 months of working with them. So that's like a contract and a half, kind of. It is nice to have that option to still have your 401k, because when you leave your staff job, you might not get to have an agency that offers it. They also gave us a set of Fig scrubs, a top and a bottom, for Nurses Week. And those scrubs are expensive, so that was really nice of them. Their website is also very easy to use. You can just search your location, filter it by pay, and you can just submit that you're interested in it, and it will let your recruiter know. Let's move on to some cons. So my biggest issue with Aya was communication. And with my experience, it was with the payroll team. It was hard for me to even get a hold of them. And you are assigned one payroll specialist, and I couldn't get him to answer his phone number that was listed, or when I would email him, it would take him a few days or so to get back to me. I just kind of felt like a lot of issues that I encountered, I really had to try to find a way to contact them, or I spoke with my manager directly on my unit. It's just not easily accessible. And also with the credentialing team, I had one contract where I was told that I would be getting first day instructions by the Friday before that Monday that I would start. Come that weekend, the day before I was supposed to start, I still didn't get any instructions. I didn't know where to show up, what time, and where in the hospital I'm supposed to be. I called their emergency line and they said that they would look into it and get back to me, but I eventually just had to call the hospital themselves and ask, am I on the orientation list tomorrow? And if so, do I come in? And where do I come in? I'm very good with communicating with my team, especially with the week and days prior to starting my orientation. It's a big deal, and I felt very helpless during that weekend. I had to figure it out on my own, and I eventually made it to my orientation day, 8 a.m., where I was supposed to be. If I didn't take that initiative to call that hospital, I wouldn't have started that week, and I would have been pushed back to the following week to start and lose 1 week of pay. My last con was my recruiter. I had such a good relationship with her. I really enjoyed communicating with her, and she was really great until I got my extension, and the rate was a lot lower than the other people who extended at that same time in my unit. When I reached out to my recruiter about it to ask if I can match those other travelers who were extending at the same time, and we all do the same job, we take care of the same patients and the same work hours, the way she answered me really turned me off, because instead of saying, let me try to find out how I can help you match that rate, she said, you shouldn't talk about pay with other travelers on the unit. That causes a lot of drama. And I basically had to tell her that it's not fair that I am not getting paid the same rate. It's a significantly less rate than what the other travelers get paid, and we are all there to support one another. It's not to tear each other apart. We are all good friends in that unit and other units in that hospital. As travelers, you form a bond that you want the best for each other because you take care of the same patients, you see them every day and know how hard they work. So yes, we are transparent with our pay because we want each other to be paid equally. I had to tell her all of that and say, can you please ask someone if I can get a matched rate, or else I'm gonna look somewhere else and find another contract. And it took all of that for her to finally say that, yes, I will try to find a way to match your rate. And that was the end for me for that recruiter. You deserve a recruiter who will give you the best rate and who wants the best for you. In conclusion, I do recommend Aya if you find a really good contract for a high paying rate and you have a good recruiter that you can communicate with, that you trust also, and just finish that contract. They are a very big company, and you just have to follow up and make sure you do these extra steps to make sure that you can be ready for your first day orientation and make sure that your paycheck is correct every Friday. The next agency that I worked with is Stability. I did one contract with them, and my recruiter was also very sweet, very nice recruiter. Communication was good. Their team is really good also. The only con is that they don't reimburse you for anything. They don't reimburse you for your licensing and your scrubs. I think that was the main thing that I was kind of confused about when they told me, oh, we don't reimburse that. When I said, I have to apply for the license, can you reimburse that for me? And they said, no, we don't do that. I said, oh, okay. And it's just a very agency specific thing. So if that really matters to you, that's one thing to look out for. They also offer insurance after 1 whole year of working with them. Their website is also very easy to use, just like Aya. You can filter by location and pay, and you can just submit and let your recruiter know that you want to be submitted to that specific position. They also gave me a nice Nurses Week gift basket with a blanket and the mug and pens which was so sweet. That was a really nice Nurses Week gift. I do recommend their company. I think they are very good people, very good with communication. Just remember that they don't reimburse certain things. That might be a con for you as well. One agency that I do not recommend at all is Sharp. I did one contract with them, and they have made me prefer bigger agencies such as Aya and New West over smaller ones because the whole process that I went through with them, bigger agencies have a lot of experience when issues arise and how to deal with them, which I felt like Sharp didn't know how to deal with. And I didn't feel supported at all by my recruiter when I had an issue. I was getting very unsafe patient ratios on my contract. My position that I accepted was only for ICU, and it specified there that I would only be in ICU because I've had experience in the past where I have been floated many times to med-surg. So I wanted to make sure that I would only work in intensive care units, and that was not the case when I got there. I was floated to med-surg and step down. When I first got floated there and I was given a 5-patient assignment when I normally just take care of 2 in the ICU, I told their manager in that unit, I said, hey, I've signed this contract. It's a legal contract where it says that I only work in ICU, and I'm taking care of 5 patients here. And I really tried to fight it. They talked to my agency and they basically had to say, you have to just work this day and we'll figure it out. We'll talk to your agency, but right now we really need someone to take care of these patients. I told my recruiter, and 2 weeks later I would get floated to step down again, and I would have 3 or 4 patients. And then the Delta surge happened. I was getting floated to step down, taking care of 4 to 5 COVID positive patients. And in step down, they are on BiPAP or a non-rebreather, and they would desat to the 70s so quickly. And when you're busy taking care of 1 patient and you still have 4 other patients to worry about, it was just absolute chaos. The whole unit felt like it was on fire all the time because we had alarms blaring all the time. And so I finally was at the end of my rope, and I said that I cannot risk my license anymore. I cannot do it. The money isn't worth it. I worked only a few shifts in the ICU my whole contract. And so I had to cut that contract short because I reached out to my recruiter constantly. I would update her on everything that was happening, and I felt like nothing was being done. And all they were saying to me is that everywhere is getting 5 patients in the step down. So this is the new norm now. And so I wrote a very detailed letter to my facility in the ICU that I was supposed to work in, and my agency, stating how unsafe that unit was that they kept floating me to, and that I couldn't risk my license anymore. And they completely understood. I wasn't charged any extra fees, and I got my last paycheck even though I cut the contract halfway. And that's when I went back to California with safe staffing ratios and was never floated to a step down or med-surg floor again. And I was able to get my mandatory breaks back and my resource nurses and my 2-patient ratio. So yeah, I would not recommend Sharp. I did not have a fun time communicating with them and feeling like my concerns were not being heard. I also have a lot of other recruiters from other agencies that I never got to sign a contract with, but the main thing to take from this is watch for red flags with your recruiters because they are your main person that you communicate with. They are your middleman, and they are your ticket to a contract. So be professional with them, be nice to them. They are also workers. You have to be honest with them. Be careful with having multiple recruiters for different agencies submit you to the same position, because you can also lose a contract that way because the hospital automatically cancels you if you submit with 2 agencies. So watch for red flags. You have to be honest if you've already been submitted to that position with another agency. If you don't like your recruiter, get another one. Go through the process, get work done, get paid, and finish it. Or extend if you really like the facility and they give you a good rate for it. These are my experiences and recommendations. I hope this helped everyone who asked me this question about which agencies I recommended. I hope this gives you an insight on how imperfect the travel nursing world is and that you have a lot of options out there. You're not just stuck to one agency and you can find a good contract for you. Let me know down below in the comments what agencies you guys recommend, what you don't recommend, and I'm interested in seeing what you guys say. So I'll see you in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye.